Doing great. Thank you for asking.
Good.
You mentioned you didn't have a discussion topic. So, what is the first thing that is pressing on your mind in terms of esports and gaming?
Um, to be honest, probably just the ecosystem around collegiate and where that looks like going forward, I guess.
Okay, yeah, I had a discussion about this. My last guest, Emily had discussed about integrating gaming and esports into education and just uh,
Mm.
having the skills be transferable. But then I was like, I have no idea how to like make a college esports program. And so like that curriculum and how like to like set up the class and then have that be like really constructive. I have no idea how that would work.
Yeah, that's it's definitely one side of it. And then the other side is, of course, like the competitions and the third parties that run all of that, and where schools can turn to ask literally any questions. So there's a lot of stuff in the collegiate ecosystem that, to be frank, just needs some help.
Yeah, definitely. I'm experienced in terms of like I was on my collegiate esports council for like half a semester, and then I got out of university. I dropped out, and I was like, you know what? This is cool and all, but like most of these guys, I'm never gonna work with them again. And I
Mhm.
was thinking, if I'm gonna do something for esports, like I want to have a company. And so I did that for a while. But then like years later, like people from university are contacting me, like, hey, come help us out with this project or something. And I'm like, listen, man, I don't really do that. I don't have that type of skill set because the collegiate slash university college, I guess the way they structure these esports programs, it doesn't work with the way I function. And so like I'm showing up to these events or something, and I'm like, okay, is this like work or is this like school? Or is this like a mixture of both? Because like
Yeah.
I don't have a good understanding of like, do I report to my professor like my boss, or is my professor like some person that I'm starting to like have like as a business partner or something? I never really
Mhm.
got that dynamic.
Yeah, it's definitely different for every school. Because some schools they don't even really let students be like leaders, I guess, in the program, and then sometimes it's completely student ran, and then sometimes it's a hodgepodge of whoever wants to be involved. So yeah, it's weird, but it definitely varies from place to place from what I've seen.
Yeah, there's like a saying that we have here in Utah. A lot of esports athletes or cyber athletes, as I call them, they get into esports thinking, oh yeah, we're just gonna go into like Overwatch or Smash Bros because that's super popular.
Mhm.
But then when I got into Overwatch and Smash Bros, I was really bad at these games, and like I couldn't compete at all. And so I was thinking, being a professional athlete, a cyber athlete, that wasn't for me. But then I see all these other people who like they make content or they stream or they do all these super cool things with these games. And I'm like, what if I'd chosen that instead of like working on like an esports or organization or startup company, or like if I just chosen to be the super focused like hyper carry gamer and like
Yeah.
just play Overwatch and be really good at it. And I was thinking that could have been fun, but then I thought about the hours and I was like, it's the same amount of hours to be good at these games as like having a regular job or working on your startup company. And like you can't sustain it for a very long time either, especially while you're in university or college.
Yeah. And for a lot of them it really does kind of become like their full-time job, right? Especially if they do like content creation around it and all of that other stuff. So then it takes up a lot more time than I think a lot of people realize to put all that content out there, and then to be like a high level player takes a lot of dedication, especially nowadays. Like we see patches in a lot of different games come out every 2 to 3 weeks, so you have to completely relearn certain aspects of the game every 2 to 3 weeks, and you have to keep getting used to it and getting better and all that stuff. So it takes a long time to be at a high level, or even to be involved in some sort of like dedicated scene. in esports?
Yeah, I don't know how it works locally anymore because I'm not in the scene as much, but all the players that I know, maybe like two or three of them went to like join like tier one or tier two organizations. And then I think when I was running my organization, Luna Esports last year, a few people contacted me and they were talking about like joining orgs. And I was like, listen, man, since I failed and like lost money and like time and like resources and people had to be on, like, listen, you have like a really good shot at university and like college, just keep it. Because
Yeah.
the the higher up you go in like these organizations and like the way their agency business model works, the attention gets like really limited. And if you don't have like a like a partner manager or something, like you're just basically working for yourself anyway. And people like aren't gonna hand you like the best sponsorships unless you have like a boutique agency or something like going through all these deals for you. And that even of itself, I didn't see a lot of that happening for people. And I wasn't sure if esports was going to have that type of arrangement later on in the university slash collegiate scene because a lot of these players are super talented, but once they go to like the pro level, their opportunities kind of like fall off if they don't network properly, and especially if they don't have the I guess the correct framework about how to become a professional.
Yeah, I mean, we see a lot of collegiate players now kind of taking that next step. Most recently there was a couple of Maryville players that are now playing in the LCS. But I think as we see, kind of the pro scene start to do it's technically a franchise model, but it's not like what we think of in traditional sports. It's not like the NFL. It's different, but it's still that kind of you pay for a slot kind of model. As we see that become more stable, I think we'll see more eyes to the players at the professional level. And then in turn, as the publishers get more involved in collegiate, they're going to obviously help support that transition in that pipeline. And so I think we're still a couple years out, obviously, from seeing, what we're all really wanting to see right now, which is that like collegiates or collegiate players directly going to that professional scene, and the professional scene really looking to them and appreciating, kind of the talent and all that stuff that went into being a collegiate player. But I think we're seeing the start of that for sure.
Yeah, I remember with Six Siege team, these guys are in university and college and like they're already professional at that level. But then I remember a few players like they would create content and stream and they do it like full time or part time. And I was like, how do you guys like balance this with like your schoolwork or like attending a family event or something? Like you guys are at like the top level, collegiate and professionally. And I was like, I've never seen that type of ecosystem where a lot of these players they can kind of live in both worlds for a while, but then the professional side, it's like I don't know how stable that's going to be for them, especially because like in school you have scholarships or like some grants or something, but like when you become professional, it's like let's hope you get that scholarship or whatever to carry you to like the next opportunity throughout your school year. Because if you don't get like the sponsorship professionally, then you might not have that salary that you want.
Yeah, and it because as you kind of mentioned, like a lot of professional players and collegiate players, the age overlaps, right? It's a lot of the same kind of people. So right now it's kind of viewed as choose one or the other, and then or like the main one is go professional and then go collegiate. And I think that's attributing a lot to the instability of the space that we've seen so far. So I think as it becomes more stable, professional careers become more viable. Like having an actual salary with health insurance and a lot of other stuff. I think once that becomes more viable, it will be more of the collegiate to professional. Because until now, it's mainly been like you might get picked up by an org that pays you a contracted amount for 6 months or one tournament and you get a certain percentage. You know what I mean? Like nothing was ever stable. And then there's always there were several professional orgs that to this day haven't even paid their players. So it was hard to keep accountability in that aspect. But um, I I think we'll see a differentiation between being a collegiate player and a pro player. I think it's going to be more of a stepping stone, but at the end of the day, it comes down to how involved the publishers get, right? Because they're the ones that they own the game, they run everything. This isn't basketball or football. It's not just anyone anywhere can run it. It has to be the publisher to a certain extent. So once they get more involved and kind of form that line, I think I hope we'll see less students having to worry about also being a professional player while they're in college, and they can actually focus on, paying for school with your talent, and then you go on to be a professional player, and then after that's over, you still have your collegiate education to fall back on.
I was really not fortunate in terms of like setting up my organization, because for me, my mistake was thinking I can just acquire all the players, and like it's great that they're a top team, or whatever ratings they may have on the ladder when they're ranked. But when it comes to the collegiate scene, it's like these guys have the responsibility to their university or college, and then on top of that, like the organization or whoever they're working with might be someone who's doing agency work. uh, they're gonna choose the agency like just not as much as I thought they would. And so when I realized that, I was thinking, especially before my company kind of like imploded, I was thinking, wow, I could lose like an entire roster. And it's not even because like they just want to get out of their contracts early, or their contract is ending with the company. It's just because the college or university could say, listen, these guys have to be at this tournament instead of like the professional league tournament.
Yeah.
And then basically I'm just sitting there like, okay, well, I can't really argue with the university or college. And my contract kind of doesn't matter because these guys had their first commitment, and they're not gonna become a professional for the reason of just money, as a lot of people think. And when it comes down to timing, like the amount of hours is still the same. Like they have to go to these tournaments regardless, or these events regardless, and they have to participate regardless of whether it's professional or the collegiate scene. So I was thinking maybe I could just have an all professional roster, but then that didn't work out. And
Yeah.
then maybe it could just be a collegiate roster, but then that didn't even work out because I couldn't even create it. And I realized that universities and colleges I could work with, they were so focused on just getting their players to the point where they can compete and they can travel, or they could uh, qualify for these events. And they were in a place where I couldn't ever really understand, like, how can an athlete or a content creator kind of choose to work with an agency or like an org over all the benefits they would get being in the collegiate scene. Because if they have a scholarship for 4 years, like that would take them way further than anything I could ever do. And it doesn't matter what salary I provide for them. They get infinite amount of benefits just being in, first, just maybe in a classroom in person, or maybe online when they have a class. And then they also have their friends there, or family, or someone that they know at least. When in my agency or org, like they don't know anybody except maybe me. And they might have a team where they might not have a roster to work with. And maybe for like a year, they might just be sitting there trying to qualify for events.
Yeah.
And that doesn't really happen in collegiate, because you already have your set events or your set schedule to do X, Y, and Z, and then you already know what you need to qualify for. And that's something I think the structure is a lot better.
Yeah, there's there's a lot of benefits to collegiate. that's that's for sure, and I think that's what a lot of people are still trying to see, especially as more schools become solidified and they can offer scholarships. um, I think that that's kind of, I mean, that's the key, right? Because even getting parents on board, and because that's a lot of students, they want their parents or guardians to be on board in one way or another. And so whenever they're like, "Hey, I'm going to go to school for esports," they're like, "No, you're not. Like, that's not viable. You can't do anything with that." And there's kind of that stigma around it a little bit. And so I think now, as you see more support and more scholarships, and it is there's a ton of benefits, as you mentioned, and at the basis of that, you also get your college education, and if you can pay for some of that by playing video games, which is an insane concept to so many people, it kind of surpasses a lot of other areas, even being professional, in my opinion, because you can still be professional after. It's not like it takes away your opportunity. If anything, it gives you more of a basis, because we kind of a different topic a little bit, but we see so much like toxicity in gaming, right? And I think a lot of that is when you get these 16, 17, 18-year-olds playing at the professional level, and it's almost they just, maturity wise, they don't really know how to handle that yet, right? Like they don't know like how to handle being the best player in a certain game or whatever. And I'm not saying that people that are college graduates are always going to be perfect, but you do have those 4 more years of someone, kind of slapping you on the wrist whenever you start getting an ego and be like, nah, like, you're here for the team, and being in a team environment and realizing that you're there for other people and not just yourself, and that there's more depth to it. I think that's one of the key aspects that people kind of overlook when they're like, oh, you can just be collegiate or professional at the same time. I think one of the key things we need to push is that, you're more team oriented, and therefore more professional teams will look to pick you up just based off of a better attitude alongside the skill. So yeah, there's a ton of benefits for it.
Yeah, I got distracted thinking like the minute I lost my roster, like I lost basically my roster, content creators, streamers all at the same time. And I was thinking before the company kind of collapses, what's the next step? And then I was like, okay, I can't go back to like collegiate, because what type of university or like what connections do I have to kind of build a program where these athletes or content creators or streamers will be able to like sustain themselves? And I was like, okay, well, I don't have a scholarship set up. And so let me work on that. And so that's something I had to figure out. And then on top of that, I also had to figure out curriculum. Like, what do these people really need? That's not money or my time or attention to detail in terms of like what coursework do they need to accomplish to get like an esports degree. Like, I don't know all of those things off the bat, but I can still plan around like, okay, well, if I need to get someone to an event or I need to get someone sponsored by X, Y, and Z company, okay, maybe I have that connection. And that's like a really good starting line. But that doesn't really help someone who's already like well established in the collegiate scene. They already have some type of career path. Their trajectory maybe isn't going pro, but they understand if they need to go to a place where, let's say, their friend or their family member is kind of disagreeing with them about esports, I'll just be like, listen, you're way better in the collegiate scene than probably 99% of orgs, because the orgs will have you for a really short amount of time. And once you kind of age out, like, there's nothing you can do. And in the collegiate scene, like, there's so many opportunities where you can get experience and you can kind of progress beyond just being an athlete or a content creator. And those skills are transferable. And that's something, again, which I didn't think about that enough until this year.
Yeah, for sure. It's hard to compete against collegiate, in my opinion, unless you're, like a professional LCS team that's already going, and there's a lot of promises you can make. But yeah, I think all the benefits I mentioned earlier, there's so much to collegiate that people don't even realize. And like you mentioned, it's just, there's a lot of people that try to get involved, and it's a very there's a lot of people vying for the same people's time. So it's hard to compete against all those other groups, and there's only going to be more people to compete against as time goes on. So I think that's the value of collegiate, is that it kind of helps solve those issues and gives the students the benefits whenever they need it most.
Yeah, I think the biggest mistake I had was just thinking, if my esports organization didn't fail, what would I have done differently? And then I look back and I'm like, I probably wouldn't have done anything differently, because the benefits of collegiate, like a year or two later, it just outweighs everything that I could have done. And my professional athletes, like content creators, streamers, like there's no more benefit I can provide them at a certain point, which it humbled me a lot. But at the same time, it's like, well, my ego is gone. Like, I don't have a way to say, okay, we're the best at XYZ, when it's like, this collegiate team just like smoked us.
Mhm.
They're not even practicing in the same scrims we're practicing in, but they can still smoke us at any time they want. And I was thinking like that type of infrastructure, that's so much better for someone developing in terms of esports and gaming rather than just like going directly into professional scene. And then you have someone who's just like me, like, okay, well, here's your schedule, show up at practice, and then you're gonna get paid X, Y, Z, and then yeah, like that's something where if I focused on that earlier, the collegiate development would have been better for me locally because I could have worked with the school, create a roster, I could have done more events or something where could actually sponsor someone, and then that type of infrastructure would have been super valuable, well beyond their 2 or 3 years as a professional gamer if they ever decided to do that.
Yeah, it's definitely come a long way in the past few years. It's gone a lot further than I think a lot of people would have imagined. But yeah, I mean, I'm excited to see where it's going because of how far it's come in the past like 4 years alone. It makes me excited for the next 4 years because I think we'll be in a completely different spot and it'll be even better and obviously new challenges. But I think it'll be even better when it comes to benefits and assets given to the students.
So, what's the most exciting opportunity for you in 2021 in terms of the collegiate esports scene?
Um, I think, as I kind of move forward in my career, it's just the ability to utilize and build upon the relationships I've already built in collegiate and just trying to get myself in a position where I can continue to make a difference, whether it's because you don't always have to work directly in collegiate esports to make a difference for collegiate esports, right? You can work for a publisher, you can work for amateur and professional events, and there's a lot of different aspects to it that affect collegiate. But at the end of the day, I just I'm hoping that I get some big opportunities to help make a more positive collegiate scene at the end of the day. Because I think right now it's pretty. Some people would say it's in shambles a little bit when it comes from like the organizer type event perspective. I think there's a lot of progress that needs to be made there, but I think in 2021, I want to be in a position where I can help create more stable infrastructure and uh, honestly a little bit of empathy to the scene. I think that that's missed out a lot on, and just helping these coaches put one foot in front of the next, however I can, because a lot of them are way too underpaid with way too many hours a week that they're trying to do things, and just helping them in any way that I can.
Awesome. Definitely interested in seeing how that pursuit goes for you because myself, I don't have those type of experiences in the collegiate world. I kind of thought if there's something I can provide outside of like an organization or startup company, like what would it be to the collegiate scene? And it'd just be like, okay, I can like sponsor someone, they can go to an event, but like, do I sponsor an entire roster? Do I sponsor an entire school? Like, what does that look like specifically? And trying to plan that in 2021, it's been really complicated with the reason being my events canceled, and then understanding that a lot of people who are content creators, like they don't want to show up to a cosplay event just for the sake of it. They want to show
Yeah.
up because they know their friends are going to be there. They don't want to show up because they know Riot Games is going to have a booth and they're going to have sponsorships and they're going to have opportunities to stream with, other famous streamers. And I was like, okay, setting all that is going to cost, X, Y, Z amount of money. And then fundraising for all that takes like a year and a half. So like
Mhm.
the opportunity just to get a sponsorship like that underway for an entire school, that would take so much of my time. I was like, well, what can I do on the local level, where it may not take so much time and resources, but it'll still be something that can impact and like have a good influence upon people who, again, like myself, I didn't really have the best collegiate experience because I dropped out of university early and then I just kind of left the scene. But then someone who's still in university, right? They can hear your story. They understand that there's opportunities for them waiting. That's something which I would like to provide and just have that narrative of like, okay, this is success and it's like viable rather
Yeah.
than just doing something that maybe your parents or your friends don't really understand, and they don't really think it's going to be a plausible idea, but like you can see a success story from others, and then maybe not someone like Faker in League of Legends, but like someone who is closer to home. Like, okay, maybe your best friend has a brother who plays League of Legends and they're really good and they're in the collegiate scene and they're doing well
Mhm.
for themselves. That's something where it's realistic to sponsor that person. And I want to provide the opportunity, just not sure on the logistics yet. But I will get back to you once I am sure.
Yeah, yeah, that sounds good. 2021 is definitely thrown a wrench in everyone's event plans, so I get it.
Awesome, Victoria. Thank you so much for your time. And I'm very happy to speak with you.
Yeah, thank you so much, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Take care.
You too. Bye.